And now we're going to bring in Michelle Krebs, who
Okay.
Cox Automotive, AutoTrader, executive analyst. I was going to call you analyst extraordinaire, but you said that was kind of over the top. So a big buzzword is just what we talked about. EVs is like the thing now. And you don't really hear much about autonomous vehicles lately, or at least for the last year or two.
No, because EVs are going to be pretty much mandated. There's all kinds of federal funding that are pushing them. So, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act has the EV tax credits, which has been the buzz in the auto industry this week, because on last Friday, the IRS issued its guidelines on those. I don't know if it straightened it up more or made it more confusing, but it's very confusing because it depends on where the vehicle's battery, and the consumer themselves, because there are price limits of the vehicle to get the credit. There are income levels for the consumer that's trying to get those credits. And then, of course, after April 18th, the rules about where the minerals come from for the batteries start coming into play. So it's kind of crazy and confusing.
Well, what is the tax credit? I mean, what's the upper limit of what people could get if they buy an EV? And then let's go into a little bit of detail on, what some of those limits are in terms of battery sourcing and income of the consumer and that sort of thing. But what is the tax credit?
So the best you can do is $7,500, which I think is the same amount that it used to be back in the day.
Yes.
And then there are ways to get partial credit. So the vehicle has to be, let's see, I don't know if I'll get all the details right, but if it's a car, I think the limit is $50,000. If it's an SUV or a pickup truck, it's either $70,000 or $80,000. I didn't have these all at my fingertips, but so that's the first thing. What's the price of the vehicle and what's your income? And I don't know all those income levels because they're married and single and that kind of thing. And then where is the battery made? The vehicle has to be made in the US. The battery has to come from North America. Eventually, after April 18th, we'll be phasing in the minerals that go into the battery. They have to come from countries with which we have trade agreements. So it's pretty complicated. Now, the other way to get around it, however, and we're starting to see that as sales got reported today, there is a clause that if you lease an EV from a commercial third party, none of those limits apply. And so we're starting to see automakers set up these, through their finance companies, lease through their finance companies, and then
do you still get the $7,500 tax credit if you lease?
Yes. Now, I don't know how that works exactly, if you just get it on the spot or whatever, but I'm digging more into that. But that's an interesting switch. And frankly, if you think about it, leasing has been way down in the last few years, just because the automakers aren't offering fabulous deals. But if you think about one of the advantages of leasing is when technology is changing and you want the newest technology. You're only in that vehicle for 2 or 3 years and there's new technology coming out. It strikes me that EVs are a perfect vehicle, so to speak, to lease.
Yeah, because they keep getting better. And also it's interesting that the price limits aren't in effect if you lease, because some of particularly the trucks and SUVs are getting up into the 6 figures now, right? Like I think the Rivian is. So yeah.
Oh, easily. The average price of an EV, I think it's actually coming down surprisingly. Last year, I think we hit a high point of almost $67,000 on average. When the overall new car average was at 48. I think it's come down to about 58, but I mean, that come down to $58,000, but
gotta have a $20,000 down payment.
Yeah, but what we're seeing is automakers are introducing more and more affordable mainstream kinds of vehicles. It all started with Tesla. They were in luxury vehicles. And like every other technology, we're starting to see that move down market.
Yeah, everything from adaptive cruise control to automatic headlights to all of that stuff. They all started out as luxury accessories that you had to order, and now practically everything you buy has them. So
Right, because we proved out those technologies. We got economies of scale on price, and in some cases, they were regulated that those kinds of technologies had to be on vehicles. So
yeah, like backup cameras, right?
yeah,
Seatbelts.
Ah.
Yes, how many lives does that say? I mean, I was one of the first to use seatbelts all the time in the 60s, right? But it was just the 2-point seatbelt rather than the 3, right? Yeah, I mean, just think how many lives that saved. The other thing that I've been reading a lot about, I don't know if that's going to happen, is sort of like if you're going to do the EV, there might be added prices on there, added costs. Like if you want heated seats or something, they're going to charge you extra for that, and it's going to come down from the cloud or something crazy. I didn't quite understand.
That's not just EVs. We've seen that. Automakers are looking for new revenue streams, and so they're looking at what kind of features can we get money for in vehicles, like, for example, Sirius XM radio. You pay a subscription fee. They're looking at more items like that. Now, the heated seats got a little heated because that's something that's already built into your car. It's just a matter of flipping the switch. So a lot of people balked at paying extra for that. But there was an announcement by GM that they're going to eliminate Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in its vehicles because they're going with their own system developed with Google. They say it's because they want to be able to, it's going in the EVs, and they're saying it's because they want to be able to gather the data about how people use their EVs. My hunch is that'll also be a revenue stream.
Sure.
Go figure, huh?
Yeah. Could any of this apply to hybrid vehicles eventually?
Might what? What part of that?
Well, I mean, could there be encouragement to get people to move to higher MPG hybrids rather than just, sort of shoehorning everyone into pure EVs, which seems to be the target right now.
Well, but that's a matter of strategy by the automakers. Plug-in hybrids, not regular hybrids, are covered under the Inflation Reduction Act. So you can get the EV tax credit for a plug-in hybrid. However, a company like GM isn't going to do hybrids. The Corvette is the exception. But Toyota has a philosophy that, it's believes strongly that hybrids are the middle term answer versus EVs. And in fact, I was just looking at Toyota sales numbers. Almost 28% of their sales are hybrids, and it could probably be higher because they have been very limited on inventory of things like the new Prius.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we're trying to program. I don't know if you caught the tail end of the previous segment that we're doing. When to get somebody from Toyota. The other one that besides hybrids they're real big on is hydrogen fuel cells. So we want to hear a little bit more about their plans in that area as well. Are you seeing much in that space other than Toyota?
Toyota, Hyundai, and there's a lot of work. Honda and GM are working on it. There's BMW's a big proponent of it. And those are covered under hydrogen fuel cells are covered under the Inflation Reduction Act. So if you buy one, you get the EV tax credit, various criteria. It's a real promising technology, but it's still pretty expensive. And, we still got to figure out the fueling infrastructure. I was at
Storage,
an event. I was at an event last week of Nikola, which was, we were at the Paquette Avenue plant, and they were showing their new battery electric Class 8 truck, and they're going to introduce a fuel cell version of that. The cost is the big factor there. Fuel cells still are pretty pricey, and hydrogen isn't on every corner.
Right.
Well, it could be something that the gas stations could add. Yes, and the gas stations are already set up to pump gas. And
I don't think that they could just do it with hydrogen. What Nikola is doing is kind of building its old infrastructure. They're installing hydrogen fueling stations, mostly in California initially. They also have these mobile units that they can, park at someplace, at a company where they have a fleet of these. Now, this is expensive. Nikola's not got a lot of money. They've had their issues, so we'll see if they can make it happen. But hydrogen fuel cells have been talked about for, I don't know, 20, 30 years.
They powered the Apollo program, for heaven's sake, and that was what, 60, 70 years ago. So, right. And the thing I've always wondered about hydrogen storage is that it's a very small molecule. In fact, it's the smallest molecule there is. So I would think the storage would have to be really well maintained to prevent leaks. So,
yes, and so the storage of that is one of the big issues too. And I don't know how they've solved that yet, but I think the thinking is that probably the first serious efforts in fuel cells will be on big cargo trucks.
Which are, generally drive a lot longer than a passenger car and are amortized over a longer period. And so you can.
And a predictable routes.
Yeah.
So then you know where to place fueling stations. So.
Yeah, good point.
So lots of stuff in the offing, and many of these things are apparently now covered by this IRS tax credit, which I didn't realize hydrogen fuel cells fell under that, and hybrids for that matter, fell under that category. So.
Right. Yeah, the whole thinking behind the Inflation Reduction Act, well, a big part of it is to bring the price of electrified vehicles down to make them more affordable to a wider range of people, and then also to have a bigger impact on things like the trucking industry. I mean, that's where you get the big hit by eliminating those emissions.
Yeah, as someone who lives close to a major road and telegraph in Dearborn, it would be wonderful if all the diesel trucks were not belching smoke out all the time, because you can see it. Okay,
it's all about cost and infrastructure.
Sure. I had one question that I saw in the note you sent us about how the extraction and oil industry's friend in the Senate, Joe Manchin, might be a bit of a roadblock to some of this. Where do we stand on that right now?
Well, he's making a lot of noise. I just noticed he's, making noise again today. He really wanted the big emphasis to be totally on domestic content vehicles, which makes it fewer that are available. And he's not fond of that loophole with the leasing, but I don't know where I don't know if it's just noise or if he's threatened to sue the Biden administration for working around the intent of the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't know.
Yeah, he's always the wild card. You never know where he's going to fall, right? So,
right.
So, okay. And so if folks want to learn more about, AutoTrader, I look at it all the time because I'm shopping for a used car, but talk a little bit about your whole company there, Cox Automotive.
So Cox Automotive is the parent company. People mostly know us for AutoTrader, Kelley Blue Book, which are our car shopping websites. We also own Manheim Auto Auctions, where we have wholesale auctions across 80 some across the country. And then we have a wide variety of software companies that generally support dealerships in managing their operations. That's how we have a lot of insight and data into what's going on in the industry.
So, and the Cox website overall is?
Cox Auto Inc. Inc.com /newsroom if you really want to see the data and insights.